Hey, this is Tom Webster, and this is Sounds Profitable for Wednesday, September 20th. I'm not exactly sure what you do. Today, I'll reflect on the many people who would gladly listen to podcasts if we could find a better way to talk to them. But first, mark your calendar for this year's Afros and Audio Podcast Festival running October 21st and 22nd at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum in Baltimore. Passes are available now for in-person and virtual attendees, and Sounds Profitable is offering 15% off. Just use the code SP23AFAU at checkout, and I'll be there as well. We're throwing and sponsoring the kickoff party the night before the conference begins, so I hope to see many of you there. I just returned to my Boston home after a week in Down East Maine that wasn't exactly in my plans, but that's when life actually happens, so they say. The purpose of my trip was to bury my father, who passed away from cancer last weekend, and to help my aging mother sort through all of the details of a life. We all knew he was sick. It was stage 4 bone cancer, but he was actually scheduled to return home last Monday to begin hospice care. So even if the outcome was certain, the timing was a bit of a shock. I spent the week in Down East Maine in a lakeside cabin, sorting through insurance and wills, talking the ear off of my therapist, and consoling my mother. As I drove back and forth around the small town that I grew up in, running errands with bankers and lawyers and morticians, I got to hear a lot of stories about my father. Everyone who knew Thomas Webster Sr. recalled him as gregarious, funny, and above all, very proud of his son, whom we talked about with anyone who would listen. He always talked about you, they would tell me. Said you did something with the radio. Now, I'm pretty sure Dad knew that I did something with podcasting, but as a 79-year-old man talking to other older and middle-aged Down East Mainers, my father gets a pass for altering it to something radio something. I mean, I used to work in radio research, and Sounds Profitable has many broadcast companies in our stable of partners. More than that, though, telling people I did something with radio meant that he didn't have to explain podcasting to anyone. I mean, we do a poor enough job of that in the business without outsourcing the job to non-listeners. As I sat and talked to my mother for hours over the last week, this came up again and again as she recounted all of the well-wishers and friends that she'd spoken with since my father's death. They all wanted to know how you're doing, Tommy. And by the way, you don't get to call me Tommy, just so we're clear. I told them you were doing very well for yourself, but I'm not exactly sure what you do. What should I tell them? Now, I suppose it would have been easier for both of them if I had been a teacher or a firefighter or a grifter. But no, I'm whatever this is. And though it didn't cross my mind last week, I thought about this on the drive back home to Boston this weekend in relation to the research study that we published last month, the podcast landscape. One of the many findings in this report was that there's a well-defined segment of Americans who don't listen to podcasts, but are absolutely open to the idea if we could only tell them exactly what we do. Now, we called this segment the Persuadables, and among other things, they over-indexed as women, 55 years of age and older, like my mom. Heck, like one of my classmates who I ran into last week up there, who also asked me if I was still doing something with the radio. It struck me then that we just need to do a better job translating what we do, what all of us do, to non-listeners. Now, I've advocated many times in the past for some kind of industry-wide PR campaign, the gut milk or beef, it's what's for dinner of podcasting. I'm not going to rehash that again. We just can't be too cute about this. It all has to be anchored not only in what they know, but what they want and not what we want. We want engaging content and intelligent discussions and thoughtful debate and mind-bending fiction. But that's not necessarily what the Persuadables want. And I know because they told us, and this again was from the podcast landscape, the most persuadable segment of non-listeners available to us wants something to listen to while they drive or walk or clean house or do chores. They want to hear radio programs on demand, and they want something to keep them company. I think about all of this now as I consider a life moving forward without my father and how my mother will fill her days. She loves to read mysteries and thrillers and Stephen King novels, which I send her from time to time. There aren't many radio stations up there, and what little there is for talk radio is not really of interest to her. Now, there are loads of podcasts that I bet she'd love, book clubs, interviews with her favorite authors, maybe even audio fiction. But she's not going to download Pocket Casts. She doesn't have a smartphone. And even if she did, she's not going to find the shows she wants, and that would frustrate her. Hell, it frustrates me. But I can't shake the thought that there's so much out there that she would really enjoy, and it would keep her company while she putters around the house or even just closes her eyes at night. And maybe, instead of trying to explain to her exactly what I do, I'll just burn a bunch of these podcasts, and if you know any, let me know. Burn them to an audio CD and mail them to her. Maybe she'll enjoy them. Maybe she'll tell a friend, and maybe that friend has a smartphone or a web browser. And let's be clear, one key to reaching the persuadables is a single website to listen to shows and not a NASCAR-like pastiche of logos for podcast apps. And in doing this, maybe I've helped grow a listener, maybe I haven't, I don't know. But maybe I've helped to keep my mother company, and that is a small, good thing, to quote Raymond Carver. That's probably more important than knowing exactly what I do. In any case, this is the mindset that's going to grow the audience for podcasting and make careers in this space, truly understanding that our job is not to talk to our friends and family and talk them into listening to podcasts. It's to understand what they want, what would cause their eyes to widen in delight, to bring them joy or comfort, to have someone to talk back to, and to make them feel wonder. And then give them those things, not an RSS feed. The first thing you can do is to call your mother and or your father, if you still can. That's pretty good advice, regardless. Thanks again for listening to my article, I'm Not Exactly Sure What You Do. This episode is hosted on Art19. I'm Tom Webster, and I'll see you next time.